All right, for this checkered block, we are going to want to use some strips. And again, these strips can be any size. They do not need to be equal in size. So I'm using a jelly roll because it's a lot easier, but with improv, you just want to pre-cut your strips to any size. Now, to make this step a little bit quicker, what you can do is find your colors, and then we are going to alternate them. So I want a yellow, a blue, a yellow, and then I want another strip with a blue. And maybe if I can get away without having the same blue, you can make this scrappy, or you can use the same color for each of those. It really doesn't matter. There's no hard, fast rules about this because it is improv. So there's a blue, a yellow, and a blue. Okay, so now what we're going to do is sew these strips together. So I'm going to sew the blue, the yellow, the blue together. And then my second step is going to be a yellow, a blue, a yellow. So we're just alternating the colors. And then when we cut them apart, we can sew them back together in a checkerboard fashion. So kind of like what this is right here, and then you get a checkerboard, and then you can rotate them through. Your strips can be any length. So because I'm using a jelly roll, it just makes it really quick and simple, but they can be varying lengths and widths. So look for that and do that for a variety in your blocks, which makes it a lot of fun. So then now that I have my strips ready, I can go ahead and sew them together. Your strips can be varying lengths. They don't have to be the full strip. They can be, and if you don't have enough of one piece of fabric, you can sew that one piece of fabric and then continue with another piece of fabric afterwards. So it's not a big deal. This isn't about perfection. This is improv, just having fun as we go. So with this one, I need to do a blue on each side with the yellow in the center. You could choose to have multiple colors in your strips, or just keep it with 2 colors per checkerboard. But within those 2 colors, you can still do it scrappy. And now this strip is ready to go, so I can press this, and I'm going to sew the second strip together. The second set will have the turquoise in the center with the yellow on both sides. So now we've got that set together, and we're going to finish it with our third. I'm going to trim this off because I don't need my third piece to be extra long. So now what we can do is take our 2 sets and press them. And when you press them, you will want to kind of pay attention to where your seams will go. So if you choose both of these seams to go up, then on your next piece, you want to have both of your seams go down. Or you can have one where your seams are pressed to the inside and the other where you press them to the outside. That way, when you put them together, those spots where the seams match. But this is improv, so we're not looking for perfection. So, you know, that really doesn't matter. If you are making, or if you wanted to, you could continue to add strips to this to make your original piece larger. So I could sew some more, like another green, and then I could, or yellow, and then I could sew another blue. So I can make this section as long as I want, or as wide and tall as I want. And then also I would have to repeat that so these are kind of equal. So now I'm just going to take my 2 sections and press them. Okay, so now that I have my 2 pieces pressed, I can go ahead and start cutting these apart and sewing them back together again. So the checkerboard just means that the pieces are going to be alternating. So I'm not going to worry about what width these are. Maybe there's going to be some that are angled. So I'm just going to have some fun with these. And then, there we go. And then I've got my second section here. So I'm going to cut these as well. Again, they can be somewhat angled or really thin. It's just up to you on playing with. You can cut these without using your rotary if you want, just exploring the different angles and stuff. So now I have my 2 piles with my pieces, and now I'm going to start laying these out. I'm going to use a mat for this, just a little bit easier to move it over to the sewing machine. So we want to start with one piece, and then we are going to sew on or place another piece, and you can see that this is alternating. So this is what gives the checkerboard feel. Again, you could have added more strips on this to make it longer, larger. You can rotate these pieces so you don't always have the same fabric. And that's where the scrappy parts come in, which is really fun. So I'm going to rotate that. Put this here. So I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and sew this new section together. So what I'm going to do is just start taking my sections or my little pieces and sew them together. I'm going to make sure the sides are lined up. And I'm going to make sure that the seams are alternating correctly so I can have a nice nested seam. If you need to put pins in this to keep them straight, then go right ahead and pin it. We're not worried about the perfection of these. They're not points, but these intersections, we're just sewing these pieces together. Because there's going to be angles and stuff on some of them, you're going to need to square this up after you're done. So just be aware that the angles will throw it out of whack a little bit, but in the end you're going to be squaring it up, so it doesn't really matter. We're not looking for perfection, we're just looking for some fun. So just continue to sew these together. This one's really angled, so it'll be fun. Depending on what the pattern says, you can put your sections together. Just checking my seam direction there. But this quilt is all about improv. So really, if you want to, you can just make some fun sizes and just go for exploration. And then in the end, when we put the quilt together, if you need to add a side, like a little spacer, then you can deal with it then. So now I've got this all finished and sewn together, and I'm going to press it. As you can see, after I have pressed it, we've got a couple issues with it. We have this corner which is coming down because this one was cut at an angle. What you can do if you want is you could square this up so you would have all of this cut off, or you can simply add a piece to this corner. This is all about improv and playing with it, so it really doesn't even need to be the same line of fabric or the same exact fabric to blend in. So what I'm going to do is just quickly sew this along this edge. All right, so I sewed this piece of fabric to the top edge, If I wanted to, I could square it up now, or I can even wait until I'm ready to put these blocks together to deal with the different sizes then. But just to give you an example, I'm going to square this up. And this just gives it a really fun look. In fact, I could, if I wanted to, add another piece down this side and not trim this off. But for this example, I'm just going to trim it really quick. Again, I can keep this. It's a little thin, but I can keep it later for later. It might have worked on this corner had I had a piece like that sitting around. So I'm just going to square it up. Again, take a look at the pattern and see what sizes you're sewing to. But those are just suggestions. They're not requirements, because in the end we'll be working on putting them all together. So now I have my checkerboard quilt block, and I can set this aside for later. Again, when I'm adding it to the quilt, I can add some borders around it, give it another trim if I need. But I do have these other pieces that I didn't finish using. So if I wanted to, I could even do some kind of change directions during the checkerboard, or I can add more strips this way to make my checkerboard even longer. So there's lots of possibilities with the checkerboard, and but that is how you make your checkerboard quilt block.